not a very clickbaity title.
It's fantastic.
All right. I think we are live. Yes, we are live. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. On another episode of Awakening Consciousness with Asher and Jesse. Glad you could join us again today. We'll be back, and we're going to post the link real quick in a few places. And away we go. So, a lot of stuff going on in the news today, and we're going to be talking about Facebook updating its violent speech policy. So now it's allowing for calls for death to Russian invaders. So that kind of dovetails into a lot of other stories that we'll be touching on briefly today. And then United Airlines is letting their non-penetrated workers back. And so this kind of goes to what we've been saying all along, like hold the line, don't give in, just say no, and everything's going to be okay. And lo and behold, we were right again. So what are the odds of that?
Our track record is remarkable.
All right. So anything to comment on before we get started?
No, welcome back. Glad we're doing 2 days in a row, and we'll try to make it more. I think we're scheduled on several days next week. We may do it next week. We may get 4 or 5 days in next week. So stay tuned. Very exciting stuff.
Yeah, I'm super excited. All right, let's. For some reason, my screen wasn't sharing last time. I watched the replays of the videos, and it wasn't sharing. But anyway, I'll just read it and see how it goes.
Well, I was seeing it in the Zoom. I was seeing it in the Zoom call.
The Zoom, yeah. But yeah, when I watched the replay on BitChute, because we had to take yesterday's video down from YouTube because you mentioned a letter that shall not be named, and we talked about things that they're putting into your bodies that shall not be named. And yeah, so we had to take it down, those bastards at YouTube. All right, so Facebook has temporarily eased its policy on violent speech after Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, allowing statements like death to Russian invaders, but not credible threats against civilians, the tech giant said Thursday. So in a glaring admission of hypocrisy, they're basically calling for the further fomenting of the war, of the divide, of the demonization of an entire group of people who largely have nothing to do with what's going on. But so it stands. So Moscow's internationally condemned attack on its neighbor has provoked unprecedented sanctions from Western governments and businesses, but also a surge of online anger and debates over social media's role in the war. So again, here we have the masses that go from COVID, and then, hey, look over here. And they all go, bah, and then run over there and say, oh, I stand with Ukraine. Pretty much that's, at least in my head, that's what they sound like.
I think that's what they sound like.
But
I think they actually make that sound as they switch from topic to topic. I think it's obligatory. In fact, I think your social credit score goes down if you don't make that sound.
Yes. And yes, the policy decision from Facebook and Instagram's parent Meta was met immediately with controversy, but the social media giant defended its change. As a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we have temporarily made allowances for forms of political expression that would normally violate our rules, like violent speech, such as death to Russian invaders, Meta said in a statement. That's unbelievable. I guess not unbelievable, but it's like, holy cow, like they actually made a statement saying like, yeah, you can say death to Russian invaders, no problem. Because we know everything going on there, and we're the arbiters of what's true and what's moral in this world. Like if you're taking your cues from Facebook or really any tech giant or any corporation or anything like that, you're going to be led down a very dark path. So just as
and here we are.
Yeah. We still won't allow credible calls for violence against Russian civilians. Okay, so at least they have a line, right? At least they have a line. Meta's statement followed a Reuters report that said the policy applies to Armenia, Azerbaijan, Estonia, Georgia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, Russia, Slovakia, and Ukraine, citing the firm's emails to its content moderators. The form did not reply to a request seeking confirmation of the policy's geographic borders. So apparently, if you're in these places, you can call for people's deaths, just not credible calls for violence against the civilians. So this is like, it's like, I would say mental gymnastics, but it's like moral gymnastics to dodge and twist and turn to be like, well, it's okay in this case. So the people we don't like, you're allowed to call for their death. But the people that we do like, well, that's off limits and you can't mention that anything about that. So.
Yeah.
All right.
So right. So there's a whole bunch of stuff here, right? So first of all, back in Walter Cronkite's days, right? Now that was all controlled bullshit too, of course, but the media was supposed to be neutral, right? We've always been taught that the media is neutral, right? So let's just start there, right? In that context, that we have a neutral media who reports the facts and doesn't pick sides. Well, this is the world of social media, but still certainly the media. And obviously, that ship has sailed long ago. So let's start there. Then from there, I think it's important to point out, right? This goes back, and this is why the media is dead, by the way. But this, traditional media, which I'm including absolutely these massive corporations in traditional media, this is why, this is why people are tuning out, right? This goes back to like, how do they treat BLM versus how do they treat a Trump rally, right? We've got BLM activists burning down US cities, right? And crickets, they're good guys. They're fantastic. They're fighting for social justice.
It was mostly peaceful, Jesse. I don't know what you're talking about.
Correct. Exactly. They're mostly peaceful.
Fiery. Yes. Okay. I'll give you that. It was fiery, but mostly peaceful.
Right. And then we've got, mostly peaceful. I mean, they literally, like, that was over and over again, the phrase used, mostly peaceful, as they were burning, as Minnesota got burned to the ground, right? Like, so we have that versus a Trump rally that literally is mostly peaceful. In fact, entirely peaceful, minus a few agent provocateurs, right? And I'm not talking about January 6th. That's a whole nother subject. We've covered that. But these are, violent insurrectionists, crazy racist lunatics, blah, 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 blah. So we can clearly see, right, the manipulation. They're not hiding it anymore. And this is why people are tuning out. This is why CNN has the lowest ratings ever. This is why people don't watch this shit anymore, minus the bad people, because that's all they got left. That's all they have left. Literally, that's all they have left, right? Another thing I really want to point out here. In fact, I'll wait a second on that, right? So there was a phrase in that article that said internationally condemned, right? So Russia's actions are internationally condemned. This is the same as like science says, right? It's groupthink. We're saying the smart people, the people you should listen to, the authorities, the groupthink creators, right? Your friends won't like you if, basically, is what it's saying, right? This is saying we've already decided that this side of this thing is bad, right? Just like white guys are bad and Trump supporters are bad and, everyone's bad who isn't going along with the agenda. So we've already decided that, sorry, I didn't hear you say again.
So straight white men are bad.
straight white men, excuse me, right? Absolutely. Yeah, the gay and transsexual and so they're like accepted for now, right? Yeah. Yeah. So, so it's like, okay, groupthink says, Russia bad, Ukraine good. This is what they always do, right? It's just like science says, it's the exact same thing. So then there's two more perspectives here, right? So, or two or three. So number one is that the comedy show continues, the spoof continues. It gets more and more spoofy every moment of every day. It's amazing what we've gotten to here. We now have media companies calling for death to, other countries' military. I guess they're drawing the line there, but whatever. They're openly calling for war, right? They're saying like, this is good. We support war. We support violence. Like, this is insane. I mean, this is, we are in the spoof here, like 70% into, I mean, where does this end, this comedy show? If people can go along with this, there's nothing they can't go along with. And we've been saying that about things for 6 months, right? And here we are, and they're going along with this. The other thing that I think is really important, like bigger picture here, is that, remember, evil wants to rule you openly. That's the end game here. The end game is that the devil, Satan, evil, the cabal, the Antichrist, the aliens, whatever you want to call it, right? They want to rule you openly. They don't want to rule the way they have. They want to be the open masters. And so everything you're seeing is a succession towards that, right? Everything. And look how far we've gotten, right? Abortion, for example, killing unborn human children. Good. Thumbs up, right? Calling for death is now thumbs up, right? What did it say? Death to the Russian invaders. I mean, this is a literal war cry to murder other humans. All right. So just stepping back from the conflict and who's right and who's wrong and all this bullshit, just on a satanic, evil ass level, this is evil as fuck, calling for the death of humans. Like, that's just evil, period, right? That's evil. And so we're marching in that procession towards evil ruling openly. That's the end goal, open rule. So I just, I want to point that out. And then, yeah, that's probably enough for now. I'll hit on the other stuff later.
Okay. So yeah, you mentioned a good point, and there's persuasive language, and we talked about sort of the techniques that they use in various shows in the past. And yeah, that's a good example that you highlighted of the persuasive language. So they say things like internationally condemned. That gets people it tricks people into thinking, oh, well, everyone else is thinking this, so now I should think this, because again, if someone's like that, then they go along with what other people do. I mean, that's what sheep do, like actual sheep, not like the people that we're calling sheep, but that's what sheep do. They go along with the herd. And so, and hence the nickname. The other thing that I want to touch on with this is because it just seems so, like, the moves that are being made seem so stupid, for lack of a better term, that it seems like this is the intentional economic suicide of the West. So you have a whole bunch of, corporations making moves that can only hurt their bottom line in the long term. They're censoring, they're deplatforming, they're making their platforms basically uninhabitable for a large swath of people. And now maybe this is ideologically driven, and it probably is, to a certain extent, and maybe to a large extent, because you take your typical Silicon Valley worker, right? Like, we can imagine where they line up politically. And is it the case that they are just so bought into their politics and that whole thing, that they would make such bad moves from a business standpoint that they would risk the financial health of their companies, because that's what it seems like is going on. And it seems like these moves that they're making seem so just like bad business moves, like deplatforming, censoring, all that stuff. It seems like a competitor could come in and use this as an opportunity to gain market share. And that's what's happened. You know, we've seen a ton of alternative platforms crop up. We've seen a lot of that going on. And then it's not just in tech, it's in other areas. So for example, the sanctions on Russia, you know, if we're putting sanctions on Russian oil, gas, fertilizer, et cetera, that makes it a lot more difficult for Americans to live, because the prices go up, the goods become unavailable. And these are really important stuff, like commodities, oil, gas, fertilizer. Like this is important, very important to the economic health of the world and of the US. And so it seems like these are self-inflicted wounds to the point of it being intentional. Like I can't figure out any other explanation that this is an intentional economic suicide of the West. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that points, those points for me are so poignant, and I second everything you said completely. And I want to disagree on one point. So we grew up in a world, me and you, right, in our era, and we were born in the early to mid 80s. We grew up in a world where corporations, athletes stayed neutral on controversial topics, right? You would never hear a corporation wade into politics, because for exactly all the reasons you said, right? It hurts their bottom line. They don't want to piss off any segment of the population. So they would tread very lightly on things like religion, politics, so on and so forth. You remember the athletes of our day. They weren't calling for social justice. They weren't calling for any of that kind of stuff, because for exactly the points that you made, right? They could hurt their livelihood. Now, I'm not saying whether that's good or bad.
Michael Jordan famously said, Republicans buy sneakers too. And people would want him to get involved because he's Michael Jordan, he was the biggest name for at least a decade. And he stayed out of it.
Yeah. And corporations even more so, right? I mean, there is no you'd interview a CEO and ask him a controversial question, and you'd see that on Bloomberg or something, or on, MSNBC. And he'd be like, well, that's an interesting topic. We'll have to put some thought into that. We'll look at it and then analyze the situation, and we'll get back to you. I mean, there's no possibility they're going to say something that could be interpreted as picking a side, because they don't want to lose business and they don't want to open themselves up to exactly what you pointed out. So I think that it is absolutely not ideologically driven. While it's true that the workers for those companies certainly are in the category that you pointed out. In fact, so much so that if you're not in that category, you're fired at this point, or you better hide your politics very carefully, or you're going to lose your job. But I think it goes back much more so to the first thing, the first, and then also the later, what you were saying, which this is just the cabal implementing their plans. And that's more important to these decision makers than it is their bottom line, and so on and so forth. This is the takedown of America. This is the transfer of power to China. This is potentially the planned, execution of World War III. And as you said, right, the United States government and all of these corporations are acting against their self-interest, if we think that their self-interest of the U.S. government is to do its best for their citizens, which of course is a joke. But if that's their, if they represent the U.S., which obviously they don't, if they represent the U.S., then they're acting against their self-interest. And these corporations are acting against their self-interest if they're representing their shareholders, without a doubt, right? And that shift that we've seen over the last, I don't know, Asher, what, 10 years? I don't know, it's more than that, probably about 10 years, into where now like corporations stand for political stuff. Like I remember when ESPN turned into like a political channel. It was not that when I was a kid, like at all. You know, it was just sports. Like it just sports. And then all of a sudden it started with like Rush Limbaugh, which was funny because, and maybe that whole thing was planned, but you know, they went right seemingly. And then he said Donovan McNabb, he said there's an interest in Donovan McNabb succeeding because he's a black quarterback. They fired him like in 30 seconds. And then basically like from there, they went so hard left, you know, that it's they're like, I wouldn't, you know, they're insane at this point. Right. But I think to me, the point here, the takeaway for me is that this is the takedown of the United States. It's on. Look at gas prices, look at inflation, look at supply chain stuff, potential war. By the way, all predicted by our former president. Not saying good guy or bad guy, not saying support or not support, but he's literally word for word said all of this is going to happen. He said, if Biden gets elected, watch out for war because, you know, in his reasoning, our enemies are going to think we're weak. There's some logic to that, but I would have a little bit different reasoning for it. But, you know, watch out for war. Biden's going to get us into wars. Here we are. He said gas prices are going to go through the roof. Here we are. He said, you know, on and on and on. So this was all predicted by him, lots of other people, and now analysts, us, you know, and here we go, you know, here we go, exactly all of it just playing out as predicted. Last point, you got to understand who these people are working for, right? Like look into Justin Trudeau and who he is and where he comes from, right? And what agenda are these guys pushing? You know, these are globalists whose mission is to implement the New World Order, right? The ultimate goal is communism. The ultimate goal is a, you know, sort of semi-human AI slave population and a lot less of us. So if you look at it in that context, it makes sense, all the things they're doing, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have a video that I could share. It was that's pretty telling in terms of like where their plans are. Why don't I share it? Let's see. Here we go. All right. So this is talking about Klaus Schwab, but yeah, here we go.
Right line up. But my favorite economic forum speaker of all time is this reptile, Klaus Schwab's top advisor, Dr. Yuval Noah Harari. Let's see what he has to say.
Data might enable human elites to do something even more radical than just build digital dictatorships. By hacking organisms, elites may gain the power to re-engineer the future of life itself. Because once you can hack something, you can usually also engineer it.
Elites hacking organisms and re-engineering life itself? Well, he's not talking about doing that to people, is he?
Now, in the past, many tyrants and governments wanted to do it, but nobody understood biology well enough, and nobody had enough computing power and data to hack millions of people. Neither the Gestapo nor the KGB could do it. But soon, at least some corporations and governments will be able to systematically hack all the people.
Well, I guess he was talking.
So that sounds fun. You know, gee, I wonder how they're going to do that. Is it possible that they're going to put something into you under your skin so that they can control you remotely? You know, we've been saying this for a while, and really the key to understanding what's going on is just listen to what they're saying. You know, there's so many people that say, oh, well, you're just a conspiracy theorist, all this and that. And it's like, well, have you looked into what they're saying and what they're telling you and the plans that they've made and the steps that they're taking that you can literally see with your eyes? And you know, it's like, Ukraine. So like, you know, how do you get through to these people? You know, you sent me a meme that a Twitter post from someone who, she is a professor, so she's way smarter than everyone else. And she says, given how groggy and short of breath I'm feeling with the virus, after 3 jabs, I dread to think how bad it would have been had I not been injected. And if that's the mindset that you're like, how do you help that person? I think there's people that are just beyond the point of being able to be helped. And she's a professor, so she's way smarter than us. There's no possible chance that she would listen to 2 guys on the internet who, we, might be a little bit intelligent and we've done a little bit of research, but there's no way, a professor would listen to us. So like, how do we help? We don't have a fancy title, I have I have degrees, but like they're not in any health or science related thing. So like, there's no chance she's going to listen to us. How do you help her? I don't know. Yeah, I've tried to help many people and unsuccessfully.
Yeah, I mean that to me is the takeaway, right? So I think I think that you don't. I think that was really an error that was made, right? I think everybody is, by probably you, I don't know, but lots of people, right, who sort of woke up to information and then tried to help and realized they couldn't. It backfires. It doesn't work. And so I think that is actually really a key to this, because this is about liberation. This is about self-autonomy, self-freedom. This is about realizing in your being who you are and living your life that way, and trying to help people, in my opinion, is a hindrance to that, because the way you actually help people is that you become the fullest version of yourself. And so then you're in a position with your energy, with your words, with your whatever, to just sort of create energy, or however you want to describe it, to be able to help people. But trying to help people is useless and usually destructive. Like, usually not only do you probably turn them even more against, whatever you're trying to convince them of, you get upset, you get like frustrated and stressed that you can't help because you can't. So I think that, I think the solution is that, first of all, we're not here to save anybody. We're here to save ourselves. Nobody else is our responsibility. Your children are up until a certain, point in their life. But outside of that, nobody here is our responsibility. You're not here to save anybody. And I think that's one of the lessons, and I think once you realize that, doors open up to other levels of sort of evolution, personal evolution, that are not open otherwise. So I think that's part of exiting the programming is thinking that we can help people, because we can't. So I think the solution is, you don't care. You can have compassion. You can have that sort of like moment where it's like, oh, look what all these people are doing, all that kind of thing. Sure. But then you don't care after that, because there isn't anything we can do. And all it's going to do is pull you off your path, your track. That's my take on that.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something really important, living to your fullest self and highest being. And I mean, and that in a way that might be the only way that you can actually help someone, is by them seeing the incredible life that you're living, and then saying, questioning themselves as to like, well, how did he get there and what is he doing? And maybe, that sounds like a great life. Maybe I want something similar to that. So yeah, I'm going to be showing my garden this year and, working on that and showing showing a little peek into my life and all the beauty that's in it. But yeah, I mean, I've made mistakes of thinking that I could try to help people. And what I realized is there's no combination of words that you can tell someone who's bought in, who's that programmed, that would help them. there's just no, like what piece of evidence could you show that professor who thinks that it would have been worse had she not been injected? Like it's just, you can't do it. Betsy says, yeah, you can't help a person who is that deeply programmed. And yeah, I mean, it's a battle. It's an internal battle, and everyone has to come to their own conclusions. Everyone has to do it for themselves. You can't do it for them, and you can't rely on others to do it for you. And so,
right.
Yeah,
And the truth, the truth is and always was there. And it's not something we have to worry about. Everything returns to God. Everything returns to 0 point. Everything returns to truth. You can only live outside of the truth for so long. So, so it's not something that we have control over or can worry about. So that's in God's hands, right? And it's there for everyone to see. I mean, look at what's happening. Look at what's happening now, like in the media, right? And we covered this a little bit, but it's like, the CDC has basically apologized and said, sorry, we were wrong. The Pfizer documents have come out and basically said, this thing is killing people in large numbers. The side effects are off the charts. If you do any analysis, it has more harm than good. This is out now, right? So the truth is always out. It's not our job to help people see that. If they want to see it, they'll reach out. Hey, you were talking to me about this thing. Well, they'll reach out if they want to see it. And great, we can have that conversation in a very balanced way, at that point. But pushing it towards people is just a bad idea. Last thing I want to say, I don't know, I think you probably had something else you want to get to. I don't have a whole lot more time. But last thing I wanted to say that's important here to me is just exiting fear, because that is the whole game. The whole game is fear, right? That's the whole game. And that's why they're just coming back to back to back. Next thing, next thing, next thing, next thing, next thing. If they can keep you in fear, they win, you lose, life gets shittier. Then whatever happens when you die gets shittier, so on and so forth, right? So exiting fear to me means also you have to exit the matrix, because the matrix is collapsing and therefore they've got stuff to scare you with, like food supply and inflation and all these different things, right? So for somebody like myself, I'm not bragging here, right? But for somebody like myself who has understood that these things were coming for a very long time, I don't care. Like whatever they do with the food supply internationally, whatever they do with the currency, however that goes, I'm good, right? I'm totally set up for that. Now, okay, you say, well, I'm not. How do I? Well, okay, you just don't have fear about it. First of all, sit, breathe, and make a plan. And you can implement that plan like that, I promise you, because God is on your side, right? So it's not there. God just wants you to see the truth and be who you are. And like, not that I can speak for God, but, be who you are and sort of embody your fullest self, right? So if you're doing those things, that magic will be there to live your best life. And at the end of the day, none of us make it out of here alive, right? So we're all like worried about, what if this happens? What if that happens? What about all these things? We're going to die, guys. Like, we're all going to die at some point. So it's, it's not something to be afraid of. It's part of the experience. So exiting fear, exiting the matrix, to me, that's really the always the point, because there is another world being built. It's not a physical world, right? It's a vibrational world. There's another world being built. Yes, it plays out in the physical, but the people building that world are not plugged in and tuned in and worried about their job and worried about this and worried about that and worried about their kids' school and worried about all these things. They're not in that world, right? They're out of that world. And so that world is like me and Asher sit, and all my friends really, or a good chunk of them, we just kind of sit and observe, what's taking place in that weird world that we exited a long time ago. And then the benefit of that is that you don't have to be stressed about those things. You can have that peace And then with that, you can create, right? You can't create from a place of like, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? You can't create from that place. I mean, you can, you're going to create, exactly what you'll create, right? From that energy. So, but if you're not, if it's just observation, if you just know you're protected, you're safe because I don't know, it just comes into your being at that point, then you're not worried about it. And at that point, you're living an amazing life, and the rest of it is just there for like, it's a comedy show. It's something you can observe or not. And that's really it.
Yeah, it certainly is a comedy show. I mean, in a way, it's very sad because there's real damage being done to a lot of people. And, I don't take any joy or humor in any of that, but just the ridiculous. I say ridiculous now because I make fun of my kids because they say ridiculous. The ridiculousness of just the situation, of the lies, of the manipulation, of the narrative, of the fact that they can get people from focus on this, and then overnight, like a light switch, flip it to stand with Ukraine and the rest of it. I also want to say that the guy that I showed the video of, he was saying how they understand biology well enough to hack human beings, and I don't think that's true. I don't think that they can cut your connection off from God, which is what at least the fear porn on the anti-injection side of things was saying. I don't think that's the actual case. Also, yes, so we had to say bye to Jesse. I'll finish up real quick. Jamia says, I enjoy these chats from you two more than any. Appreciate you. Well, I appreciate you too, and thanks for joining us. Where do we find new Pfizer study? Of course, I can't find it online. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know where it is either, but I mean, suffice it to say, there's a reason why they wanted to wait 75 years before they would have to release it. The other thing that I wanted to touch on briefly is that United, after mandating certain medical interventions, they are, they're letting that go and letting people come back to work. And it just goes to show what we've been saying all along is that no, you don't have to give in to the mandates, to the dictates and the rest of it. You can say no and things will be okay. Because I'm a firm believer that once you've really taken a stand, like actually decided, no, I'm not going to go along with this. No, I'm not going to do things that I don't want to do. Then doors and windows and the new world that's being built will open up to you. And this is a good example of just, that world is going away. The narrative lasted as long as they could prolong it, but it really is a narrative and it's not about anything real. As we've discussed many times in the past, the virus has never been isolated and therefore nothing like that ever existed. And so, yeah, Betsy says it's not communism or socialism, it's a technocracy. And I mean, yeah, I try to stay away from labels and rather just try to describe the situation. So it's basically they, as in the rulers of the world, want direct control over people. And how do they do that? They work with corporations, they work with governments, they work with, banking, et cetera, to basically tighten the squeeze on the freedom of the people. And whether that's controlling where you can buy or sell things, or what medical procedures you need to do, you need to participate in to be able to work for a living. We can call that whatever name we want, but it's basically trying to force people into a system, into a way of life that goes against all humanity. And that's what we're fighting against. That's what we're not really fighting against. We're more so trying to build a new world. And so that's been the driving force behind what we're doing here on this show is to point out what's going on, but also more importantly, focus our energies and intentions on building the new. And so, that's what we're hoping to get people who watch the show to focus on as well, whether it's with us, with other people, join people of like mind, join communities that are building themselves outside of the system, outside of the matrix, take steps in your own life to become more resilient, self-reliant, personal responsibility. And that's the way out of this. And so with that, I will say good day to everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, especially over on Rumble. There's a pinned chat in the top to subscribe to our Rumble channel. We have 2 strikes on YouTube, and we only have a couple videos up on the YouTube channel because they've gone back and sort of given us strikes on some of the older videos that we've done. So we've taken those down. All our videos are over at Rumble, BitChute, and I think brand YouTube, but we plan to make Rumble our home. So please subscribe over there. And with that,